Welcome to another episode of UEN's PDTV. In today's episode, we have traveled to St. George to visit with Tony Campbell, Director of Learning and Innovation Technologies for Washington County School District. Tony will help us navigate through the relationships between various instructional technology frameworks.
I'm the Director of Learning and Innovation in Washington County School District, and we have just over 50 schools in the district. We have a smaller team that works with all of the different schools. We have really a coordinator in our elementary schools, a coordinator in our secondary schools. We have an education data specialist, and then we also have a person who deals with the development of our digital content and pieces like that. And they all are working together to support the work that we're currently doing in our schools. We have several thousand teachers, and right now I think we're at about 37,000 students total.
EdTech Competency 1B focuses on essential pedagogical understanding and application, specifically using research-based models of technology integration to design high-quality instruction. Throughout this episode, Tony will guide us through various models of technology integration and help us understand how they connect and overlap and intertwine to ultimately support high-quality education. You've been working a lot on helping the teachers in your school district understand what good digital teaching and learning really looks like. Can you tell us a little bit about what that consists of?
We really want teachers to look at that focus on learning and on what practices are best for learning. And where technology brings some sort of an advantage, that's where we want to leverage it. But we also know that there are going to be times when it may not bring that advantage, and where a hands-on experience or a small group experience or another kind of experience will really facilitate learning better. And so we want to keep that focus on learning and the learning outcomes. Technology is a tool. It's a magnifier. It brings things out and makes them more visible that may not initially be visible. That freaks some people out. But if I take and I've got practice that may not be refined yet, and I add technology onto that unrefined practice, I'm going to have an unrefined technology outcome. If I refine my practice and improve my practice, and then I layer in technology, it's going to magnify that good of what I'm doing and those strengths in what I have. And so we spend a lot of foundational time talking about those ideas with our school. And the first couple of years that we work with them, really our focus is on refining the PLC process, refining coaching, getting the right culture in the school, getting the right instructional practices in the school. And then we start talking about how to layer in that technology.
What have you been exploring? What are the foundations of the theories that you're teaching these teachers?
Most educators came to education because they were passionate about what they're doing. And we want to retain that passion and that excitement and that enthusiasm. So one of the big things that we realized is that our approach needs to be that way. But we also can't leave things so broad and so open that schools are looking at this and going, okay, wait, hold on, what do I do? How do I do this? They need some guidance. And so finding that balance between the two has been a little bit tricky. And one of the things that we've done is we've developed a scope of a document. And we've really made that whole document start from a school that's just beginning to a school that's deeply entrenched in these processes. As they work through that continuum, we take this piece and we say, okay, here it is. You have success criteria, you have action steps, and they look and say, hey, this fits our school. This is something we need right now. So in taking that step back and saying, hey, here are the things that you're doing as part of your PLC process already, and here are some of the ways that some transformative practice can help you do that better or easier. One of the things that we see in that traditional education where we start, like we were talking about with that focus on learning, is we tend to start with professional learning communities and educator effectiveness pretty tightly coupled together. And we see that increase in equity happening because we have teachers who are talking to each other about their practice, and they're finding strengths and weaknesses in their practice, and they're sort of calibrating with each other, and they lift each other up a bit. And so that practice within that team and even potentially within that school becomes more common. And that's what creates more of that equity in that instructional experience for students. We also tend to bring, after these practices and structures, and we try and tack on digital teaching and learning or technology and as those learning tools and resources. And when we do that, we don't see significant change in the teaching and learning process. We see more engagement. The kids are excited because they get to use a cool tool, but it doesn't necessarily equate to change outcomes that we want to achieve in that depth of learning. When we bring this in and bring it in more deeply, we get between educator effectiveness and digital teaching and learning that increase of effectiveness. And the reason that does that is teachers are not waiting so long necessarily to get information back. They can get information back on student performance very quickly, which allows them to change practice. And so if we can respond more quickly with a student and get an intervention to them before that becomes stuck in that long-term memory, we're able to more effectively teach because we're not having to spend so much time in intervention. When we bring the technology across here, we're increasing that efficiency factor. So I'm not spending hours crunching all of the data to then be able to look at it using our scenario. What I'm doing now is I'm looking at the data very immediately that day, right after the assessment, 2 minutes from now, whenever that is. And I'm able to spend my time now examining the student learning, the student outcomes, to identify whether it's something in my assessment, something in my practice, something that the student may have missed, like a pre-activity that we've done or learning from last year where I need to provide additional supports. And so bringing these things together and understanding those relationships in the model really connects things. Educator effectiveness is based off the Utah Effective Teaching Standards. The reason this becomes important is if we're going to say, hey, we have learning practices here that we need to utilize, we need something to tell us what those practices should be. You know, what's the research that says this is going to be effective or this is not, so I don't have to sort of find my own way. In our professional learning communities, we have our learning structures, we have our state core, and we're looking at the state core to tell us what things need to be taught, at least at what grades, right? We have flexibility in our scopes and sequences and things like that, but that keeps that learning continuum going. When we look at digital teaching and learning, we're focusing on learning tools and resources. We're using the ISTE standards there. And ISTEs spend a lot of time looking at digital practices and identifying what practices are powerful, and they've divided that out for administrators, for teachers, and for students. And so that builds that framework or that groundwork that we need to really start to talk about transformational change. As we look at the relationship here between the teachers and the students, we also need to think about the greater relationship, because within technology, there are a lot of models. And what I see is schools cavitating towards one model or maybe two models, or people are looking at them and going, oh, these don't work together, they don't connect.
This is a big question for a lot of us, right? We look at this list and we're like, what do I use? What's the best? I want to hear what you've come up with. How do these fit together? Are some better than others? Do they overlap? What have you worked on in your district with all these choices?
I really spent a lot of time thinking about why. Why does this district use this one? Or why does this LEA use this model? And why do they say, hey, this is really effective and this hasn't been as effective? And you've got people behind each of these models that are passionate and dedicated to them, that have shown evidence that they do make a difference. I started trying to draw this out in a way that made sense, and it took a long time to sort of get there. And there's a lot here. But I wanted the center of this to be around Utah's portrait of a graduate, the mastery, the autonomy, and the purpose, because Utah spent a lot of time building that out. So in this mastery part, we look at deeper learning, universal design for learning, multiple means of representation, the EEE framework, we look at enhancing learning, and the TPAC really helps us balance that portion of what we're working with out. When we come to the how piece, if we look at the SAMR, we're looking really at that depth there. How deeply do we engage the student in this content? So we extend the content. We find multiple means for them to express their understanding of the content. Future-ready skill sets. Skills deal with application. and become really important. When we get over here, we're really letting them practice those skill sets and apply them. And so we're looking at those behaviors that they're using to do that with, and that's where the technology integration matrix is very valuable. We're looking at multiple means of engagement. Of course, engage, the same here. There are some parallels. And then we're personalizing the learning, meaning the student's driving that more because that gives the student a direct and connected purpose, which means that they're going to retain the information longer.
When you first look at this, like you said, it's a lot, but you identifying how each of these models that I've heard of and used really support all these different pieces of what is going to help the student really learn, retain, transfer knowledge. This is a work of art, if you ask me. This is honestly what I've been looking for, because I've typically been saying, well, for this particular lesson or course, I'm just going to focus on SAMR, or for this particular thing, just on that. But this shows how they're just so integrated and gives that big picture that I think a lot of educators are looking for.
And that's one of the things that we found is when they bring these pieces together in this model structure, they have a more quantified way to measure their success or measure what's working and what's not working within their classroom. And we looked at the Marzano's high reliability schools, and there are a lot of amazing things with this particular model. It does have success criteria, it does have action steps, but we also looked, as we worked on our sort of the work for our district, we looked at how clear this would be to connect to what our teachers and students and admins do every day. And one of the things that we really realized is, well, this is amazing and wonderful, and I'm just going to say for us, we were concerned that it would feel like another separate thing. It's like, okay, now I'm doing PLCs, and now I'm doing digital, and now I'm doing Marzano, and we wanted to be sensitive to that perception. And so as we thought about that, we really looked at our schools and we're like, where are our schools at? What do our schools need? And we said, you know, we've got schools that are they're ready to start dabbling with things a little bit. They're still figuring out the PLC at work process. They're still figuring out how to get good coaching embedded across the school. But they're ready to look at technology a little bit, to start to learn how technology works. And we call those our foundation schools because they're at that foundational place with all of this work. And we are preparing them for that comprehensive teaching and learning. Right? Our exploration schools, we engage with a little bit more. And they have readiness for comprehensive teaching and learning. So they have a more solid foundation of the PLC process. They have the solid foundation for the coaching, and they're ready to start to look at how technology can impact their work beyond that. Our transformation schools are now implementing these practices. It's not just that they're ready for them, it's that they have the leadership in place and the willingness of the teachers in place to take action and to begin to engage in transformative practices. And then when we come to our innovation schools, and this is where, like in the state of Utah, we talk about digital teaching and learning and essential elements. When we come down here to innovation schools, we're talking about competency. I want to make sure that these students master these essential standards. So bringing it back to the PLC at work process. And I'm going to give them the tools and resources that they need as an individual to be able to do that. And I want to get them to the point where they can do that independently more and more. And it's important as we work with this, that we have good clarity, consistent communication, and then that consistency along the path.
I love seeing how you have mapped all this out and thought about all the systems within your district and then chosen like your starting points for really getting this moving. And I think that those roadmaps can be beneficial to other LEAs as they're thinking through their processes and their systems for really promoting this type of change.
Well, thank you. And this is designed to be fluidic. It's not like locked down and set in stone. As we work through it, it's like, ooh, that should have been there. Oh, that should have been this. Oh, this should have worked this way and not this way. And every LEA is going to go through that process for them based on their circumstances, their students, and their needs.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom and experience and all that you've been working so hard on here on PDTV.
Happy to do so, and happy to be able to talk a little bit about this and to give others an opportunity to look at it if it's something that they find value in.
Now that Tony has shared his insights on instructional technology frameworks, consider how you can use research-based models of technology integration to support high-quality instruction in your local education agency as well. Start by getting to know the various technology frameworks. What are their specific purposes? What do they focus on? Are there certain use cases that are better for some frameworks than others? Then compare these frameworks to your LEA's vision and mission. Are there certain frameworks that best support your goals? Also consider which tools and strategies your LEA is most focused on, and then select frameworks that best support their use. Washington County School District has developed a digital transformation plan that integrates all of these elements, their vision, mission, tools, strategies, and goals, which really helps educators at all levels have a comprehensive plan that can help them focus on the LEA's main priorities. Consider how you can communicate all of these aspects of your plan to educators in your LEA as well. For even more ideas, strategies, and tools, and resources from Tony and Washington County School District that will help you master this competency, be sure to visit uen.org/PDTV to access the teacher toolkit that accompanies this episode. Thanks for watching UEN's PDTV. To access more professional development resources from UEN and to schedule trainings, be sure to visit uen.org/development. We'll see you next time.